Compliance, the final frontier. Tom Fox is the voyager of trekking through compliance. His mission? To explore the original series and seek out and share what it can teach you about compliance. Here's your host, Tom Fox.
Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox. I would like to welcome you to a special encore series of Trekking Through Compliance. This series will focus on the 2020 television show Picard. In this series, I'm joined by Megan Dougherty. Megan is co-founder and partner at One Stone Creative, a podcast production firm. Megan is a Star Trek aficionado, although a Voyager Star Trek aficionado. And as all of you listeners know, I'm an original series aficionado. Nevertheless, we both love Jean-Luc Picard, and we are going to explore the lessons learned and the shows and our love for Star Trek in the context of Picard. So sit back and enjoy this special presentation from Trekking Through Compliance. Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox back again with Megan Dougherty in our continued exploration of Picard, the television series on Trekking in Compliance. Today we're going to take up Picard episode 4. In this episode, entitled Absolute Candor, Picard asked Rios to make a detour to the planet Vashti, where he helped relocate Romulan refugees before the attack on Mars. He calls on the Kuwait Malat Romulan warrior nuns who took in a boy called Elnor, whom Picard has grown close to. Picard asked Elnor, now an adult, to join him on this quest. Elnor initially refuses, but changes his mind when Picard is attacked by Romulans who resent Starfleet abandoning their evacuation effort of the Romulans when their sun went supernova. Picard and Elnor then beam up to La Sirena, where Rios and Rafti are fighting a battle with a local warlord. A strange ship intercedes to help La Sirena win the battle, but it's damaged in the process, and the ship begins to disintegrate. This forces the pilot to beam over to the La Sirena. And one of the great endings of any television show ever, it turns out that the pilot is 7 of 9, the Borg we were introduced to in Voyager. Meanwhile, outside the Borg, or rather aboard the Borg cube, Soji is trying to find out more about the Romulan ship that was assimilated by that cube and about why she was called the Destroyer. Narek offers to get her information on the ship, but they have a falling out when he expresses doubts about her past. Rizzo, his sister, tells Narek that he now has a week to get the information on the location of other synthetics from Soji before she switches to a more enhanced interrogation strategy. So, Megan, what were some of the highlights from this episode for you?
Well, I think the first one for me is, had I known that radically honest Romulan assassin nuns were a career path, I would not be producing podcasts right now. So, life goals right there. And I thought that whole order of that whole community kind of within Romulan culture was really, really interesting. So that was a big one for me that I really liked. Of course, 7 of 9 appearing at the end. I screamed at my screen out loud, terrified my partner. But that was pretty fantastic.
That's funny because I screamed as well.
It was so great. I never saw it coming.
So what about this order? First of all, it's also apparently sworn enemies of the Tal Shiar, which makes it interesting as well. Mm-hmm. But I don't recall ever having heard about this order before. Is that right, or were they referred to in either TNG, Voyager, or even Deep Space Nine?
I feel like this is new, and just I feel like, well, broadly with this whole series, they're taking a lot of liberties with the Romulans. I have I remember Romulans always, they all dressed the same, they had the same haircut, they were very, I don't remember this kind of diversity of Romulan-ness. Right. So I don't remember seeing them, hearing about them before. But I thought it was really interesting the way they arranged it. So it's a female order of assassin nuns So aside from being just the coolest thing ever, I meant.
Oh, I thought it was the absolute candor you liked, and turns out it's the assassin angle.
Something about assassin nuns at Radical Candor. I mean, I'd get used to it, but I'm Canadian. I have trouble dealing with like American levels of candor. It would be a challenge. But that they set them up as being really antithetical to Romulan values, which I assume would be, more subtle and less direct. I just thought that was really interesting. And then there's kind of the whole sellsword to hopeless causes aspect.
Right.
As kind of a plot description of the main plot of Picard's quest. It's officially hopeless now, so that's good. That sets us up for hopefully some satisfying reveals later. What about you? What were your highlights and takeaways?
Well, 7 of 9.
It was so good.
It was so cool. And it was right at the end, and I was just screaming, no, this can't be the end. No, I want more. So that was cool. We have talked about some of the fight scenes in this podcast series, but I wanted to bring up the CGI around Battle with the Ships. I just thought that was outstanding, and they have a planetary defense system that was also a part of this battle. So it was cool. Like 5-dimensional chess. And then when 7 of 9 shows up, and she's actually, I think, a Fersner or some sort of a ranger. You may not know the complete history of the Texas Rangers, and so I will help you on this point.
Thank you. I do not know the full history of the Texas Rangers.
Yes, we're a paralegal organization during our War of Independence, and then became an official legal organization, and they essentially ranged over the frontier, and they protected the frontier from Indian attacks, Spanish or Mexican attacks, and basically protected people. And that's the tradition that she is in now as a ranger. There are Army Rangers, and that comes from a different type of ranger that started out in the American Revolution against England.
Oh, that's cool.
So I can talk about Rangers all day. And when she says ranging, that's actually a term as well. So, but she's
okay. And so that changes kind of, I guess, maybe how we're meant to think of her, though, because it's a noble profession, if not necessarily an official one.
Right. Not just a paid assassin.
Yeah.
So a noble profession. So much like your warrior nuns. But the battle scene with the ships was just outstanding, and I rewatched that a couple of times in preparation for this episode. It did seem to me that, and then the way the Captain Rios, controls the ship, it's all virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was interesting as well. Although Picard is still having trouble adjusting to the fact he's not the captain of the ship.
I thought he was kind of charmingly cognizant of that, though, whenever he accidentally took command.
Kind of in the way an old uncle would.
Yeah, I just I like how he caught himself on it and corrected it. That I think counts for something. But just on Captain Rios, I don't think I think I noticed it before, but it really hit me today that his entire ship is staffed by holograms of himself in different roles.
Yes. Yeah. And that expands. I will give you that hint for the next episode. There's even more of them.
Okay. So that's wonky, and I'm really curious if they're going to explore what's the real difference here between a hologram and a synth. Like if they're both sentient and if they're both interacting with humans and they both can control things, what's the difference there?
Well, I think you're just hoping that the Doctor is sentient. I can't imagine that the Doctor from Voyager is a sentient being.
There was a whole subplot about that.
He made him sentient because he had to wear a little thingy that made him on all the time. But I never really gave him the equal treatment of sentientness that we gave to Data. Mm-hmm. But yes, lots of holograms that do a lot of different tasks on the ship. So it was, I believe, the emergency holodeck.
The hospitality hologram.
Hospitality hologram.
That was so good.
That's what I want. I want a hospitality. I want to go to a Marriott, and I want to get the hospitality hologram for my room, just to make sure the room is so.
I bet that's going to happen in our lifetimes.
Well, I look forward to that one. What about Rafty in this one, or Raffi? She seems to me to be, in this episode, becoming angrier and angrier. Did you see that?
I thought she was getting more emotional, but in kind of in every direction. So like she was angrier, but she was also happier and kind of more, hey, we're all on an adventure together. So I thought she was just like, her feelings seemed to be getting a lot more extreme in multiple directions. Like she was really unhappy that they didn't go right to Free Cloud.
A large part of the scenes around Picard were him apologizing for the Federation abandoning the Romulans on the evacuation. That leads to not the climactic, but a climactic scene on the planet where he is thrust into a duel and then protected by Elnor in another great choreographed fight scene. Apologies, amends, what can you do to make up? That's actually a big topic in Houston these days because you may not have heard, but we have a baseball scandal in America. It involves my Houston Astros, and it looks like they cheated to win the World Series.
That's a big deal.
Yes, it is a big deal. And phase we're in now is they've been punished. All of the sanctions, punishment, suspensions have been delivered, and there's a huge debate on, is that enough? Should they be stripped of the title? Should they have to give money back? Should they have to do other things? Because the owner of the Astros, in his infinite wisdom, had a press conference and basically gave the middle finger to the world and said, oh, yeah, we're sorry. It's our trophy. Go screw yourself. So it didn't go over well. After cheating. It didn't go over well. And he started with, I am not accountable for people who cheat under me. So it didn't go over very well, and it was viewed as sort of the classic non-apology apology. So I was wondering what your thoughts might have been, because it seemed to me, I just had trouble with.
But he's plainly never been a manager in a mid-level corporation.
Picard's apologies. That he really, he did stop, and whether he stopped for his own reasons, trying to help the evacuation when he sounded so committed to it. Did he abandon those people? Was it wrong at the time? In the light of hindsight now, should he have done more? But I was not really feeling a lot of sincerity from his apologies. What were your thoughts around that?
I'm starting to get really frustrated with him because, I mean, he's getting, he's getting kind of involved in the broader galaxy again. And he keeps going back to all of these people that he had these relationships with, one kind of a relationship or another, that he hasn't talked to for whatever reason in 14 years, and trying to go back in and just reconnect with them as if nothing has happened in the intervening time. Or that they left on great terms and everyone was really happy with the intervening 14 years, which was obviously not the case. And then when he was on Vashti, when he got into that dispute with the former senator and the other, I mean, it's like he had gone into their town, broken down a sign that said Romulans only, sat down, and not expected any kind of pushback. Like that. What did he expect to happen? Was he was asking for the fight? He wasn't thrust into it. He asked for it.
You're right. I wondered what he was trying to accomplish there.
He's not Saint Picard. No one likes him anymore.
So what were your thoughts about the absolute candor, other than being Canadian and having trouble with even an American level of candor? And I've experienced that for the listeners who haven't. Let me tell you, it is something. She has chastised me before.
Initially, my first thought was, oh my gosh, this is kind of mean, especially to a child. Because that opening scene where he's just like, no, he doesn't like children. Children are disruptive to both pleasure and work. And I'm just like, oh man, that's accurate, but really unkind. And so, that was interesting. But I think on balance, I like it. I like it between adults. I don't like it from adults to children because I don't think that's fair. Yeah, I wonder what radical candor has to do with hopeless causes. Because I can't imagine that they're not connected ideas kind of in this organization.
Right.
But yeah, and I think it's also an interesting counterpoint, isn't it? Because it would be impossible for everyone on the show to be being honest with each other all the time. There's a lot of non-candor happening, like with Soji and Merrick. Within all of the Starfleet organization, people are deceiving each other. And then you've got these Romulan warrior nuns who are being radically honest and mean to children. So I think it's an interesting counterpoint, but I don't really know what it means in a broader context yet.
So a couple of things. One was I was very intrigued by Soji's reaction to being called the Destroyer, and the reaction being, I need to find out more about this Romulan ship. What happened to them? Mm-hmm. Why did they think I'm the Destroyer? And what have I brought? What about my relationship that I haven't tapped into is going to tie into that? So I thought that was a great point to explore. There were a couple of great cookies in this movie for you Star Trek aficionados. There was actually a reference to Data's cat. That was probably my favorite.
Oh, and opera, Klingon opera.
Klingon opera.
Someone is going to have worked with Worf at some point.
There was in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, there was a great line where Christopher Plummer asks, I think Kirk, if he'd seen Hamlet in the original Klingon. It was quite spectacular.
Dollars to donuts, someone has produced that, like on our Earth.
My Klingon's not that good.
Mine either.
So
next project.
So Dr. Girardi really didn't seem to play that big a role in this case. She was just kind of there.
And adorable.
Really, any thoughts about her in this episode?
No, I feel like she was mostly filler in this episode. Like I feel like we got to know her better, and we got to see more of her personality, which is charming for one episode, but would get old if it continued in that kind of like, haha, yes, I'm going to talk all the time and water your plants. But she wasn't really in it that much. And it kind of, I think it was, she really did ask, was like, oh, am I supposed to be here? Am I part of the team? Am I on the crew? And like, no one really knew how to answer that. And we're just like, we don't know. You're just here.
She does seem like about the every person who's got the 200 IQ that doesn't know how to fit in. So she just talks all the time.
Yeah.
And then we had continued creepiness between brother and sister, Romulan spies.
Oh, that is exponentially increased creepiness. It just keeps getting worse every episode.
Fortunately, that we're on network television, so everything's going to be PG. But there's a scene where she beams on to his bed while he's sleeping, and they're both clothed, but it was still very creepy.
And just her tone of voice was unpleasant. Did not love that. I mean, if she wasn't so kind of weirdly into her brother, I think she was a really cool character and a great villain, but like that dynamic's not adding anything for me to my enjoyment of her as a villain.
Yeah, imagine Hannibal Lecter as a woman with his sister.
Yeah, no, yeah, something. I think maybe it's a little unnecessary. Maybe there'll be a good reason for it. Maybe they're like actually. They were just adopted by someone when they were both adults, and it'll be retconned into being less creepy. But we'll see.
Well, I'm greatly looking forward to seeing what comes up next, Megan.
Me too.
All right.
Thanks, Tom. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode of Trekking Through Compliance, you can help it grow by sharing it with the biggest Trek fan you know.